like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Moore,
Present.
Councilman Neely,
Present.
Councilman Iacilli.
Here.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Here.
All right, and would you also please read the notice of the change of time for the work session?
Certainly. Members of the town board, change time of work session, Thursday, July 16th, 2026. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 62 of Town Law and Resolution Number 2026-34, adopted on January 5th, 2026, the work session scheduled for Thursday, July 16th, 2026 will begin at 11 a.m. Maria Z. Moore, Supervisor, dated July 15th, 2026. Thank you.
All right, so we are going to start our work session today with an update from Suffolk County Water Authority and on water conservation and other matters. And with us is Jeff Sabo, CEO, and Joseph Portnoy, Deputy CEO. Why don't you come on up to the table and join us?
Thank you very much. Do you think it's easier just to look at the presentation if we're here, or it doesn't matter?
Whatever you want to do.
Whatever's easy for you, you can sit on that and you can kind of turn your chair a little bit so you can see the presentation as you go through it, or.
It might be easy to sit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm sure it'll work. We just want to make sure we have about 12 slides
Sure.
Okay.
that we think will be useful. So, my name's Jeff Sabo. Most of you I've met before, and I've been out here several times. Over the many years I've been CEO of the Water Authority. Before we get into the presentation, I just want to sort of frame, and Joe's going to run through the slides, and then we'll answer questions if that's okay. Suffolk County Water Authority is a public benefit corporation, a not-for-profit public benefit corporation established by the state of New York. We have no taxing ability. We serve safe drinking water from essentially Melville through to Montauk. About 1.2 of the 1.5 million roughly Suffolk County residents. So we don't serve everybody. You folks know that very well because you run the Hampton Bays Water District, and there are other small water districts across Suffolk County that we don't serve, but we work with. You know, we have good relationships and intermunicipal agreements and all this stuff. When they need help, we help them. If we need help, they help us. But overall, we do the best we can to provide safe drinking water. We're governed by a 5-member board. We're not part of Suffolk County government. We follow the rules that from the federal government, from the EPA on down to the New York State Health Department, down to the Suffolk County Health Department. They are our regulators. We are required to test for 200 or roughly chemical compounds. We actually test for over almost 500. So we're 250 more than we're required to, which we're really proud of. I say this all the time. You may have heard me say this. I wish I could take credit for that as CEO, that this is one of my initiatives. You know, we test more than we're supposed to and more than we're required to, but it's actually been a long-standing practice at the Water Authority as we test for unknown or unregulated compounds. We typically continue to test to make sure that the aquifer is free of them. If they're detected, then we set up plans to address them and to remove them from the system. We have a laboratory that is first-rate, nationally recognized. We run over 200,000 samples a year and get over 1 million different results. All of those results are published in our annual drinking water quality report. It's on our website, and it's accessible to residents, both pre-treatment, and then post-treatment water quality. There's also distribution samples that are recorded that are available. So we test pre-treatment, post-treatment, and then in the system itself to make sure that we're providing safe drinking water and staying within and complying with all the rules and regulations.
About 200,000 samples a year, is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep, producing over 1 million results. I think it's about 1.8.
Yeah, we have 600 wells, so that just the compliance samples for the wells alone are quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What else did I want to mention about us?
We don't tax, or?
Yeah, there's no, all the revenue that we generate is from the sale of water. We have a very small amount that comes from sell revenue, but that's about maybe $12 million. We have a capital budget of $100 million, $120 million, an operating budget of a couple of $100 million annually, 600 employees, 2/3 that are union, 1/3 that are management. And I'm really proud of the work that we do. I think we're nationally recognized as one of the best drinking water providers in the nation. And that's not just me saying it, but it's our peers saying that. I'm also president of the National Association of Drinking Water Suppliers. It's the largest municipal drinking water suppliers in the country, and I'm fortunate to be president of that association. My 2-year term ends this October. And I'm hoping to get Joe and one of my other deputies to be involved in that group. We do a lot of good work across the country. Most of it's lobbying and working with regulators and Capitol Hill and trying to ensure that the industry is being proactive in protecting drinking water supplies across the country. So why don't you tell folks about yourself a little bit, Joe?
So I've been working for the Water Authority for 30 years. Just a little over 30 years. Before that, I used to work for the Long Island Lighting Company. So I've been in the utility business for a long time. I started with the Water Authority, working in their operations department, running the water system. Like I said, we have 600 wells, so there's an awful lot that goes into keeping everything running, keeping all the filtration systems running. So I did that for a while. I was quickly promoted to the chief engineer position at the Water Authority, so I was involved with all the construction of new wells and new treatment systems, new tanks, everything that we do to support any additional wells or treatment that are necessary. And then probably, 15 years ago, I became the deputy CEO for operations, and I handle not just the engineering group, but the production group that produces the water, and then the distribution group that handles all the work that's out in the street. So we have a lot of assets, linear assets as they're called. So we have about 6,000 miles of water main, 37,000 fire hydrants. So there's an awful lot just to maintain that system. And then like Jeff says, we have a $100 million a year capital budget. That's every year we plow $100 million back into the water system. And if you can think about that with respect to the Hampton Bays water system and what it costs to run that, $100 million, we're putting in a lot of material when we do that. We're putting in about 30 miles of new water main a year. A lot of it is to replace the existing water main that we have that was put in the 50s and 60s and was cast iron and was undersized and is corroding and has a lot of water main breaks on it. So we spend a lot of time replacing water main, but with 6,000 miles, it takes a long time to get to the point where everything is buttoned up. So that's a constant battle for us.
What's the cycle that you have to
We'd
replace?
like to be on a 200-year cycle, but we're not there. I'll be very honest with you, and it would be very costly to get to a 200-year cycle. So we're doing what we can. We keep a close eye on where all the breaks occur.
The different philosophies, right? It's, this is the infrastructure that needs to be replaced, and this is the replacement schedule for that infrastructure based on, all known, sort of everything known. And then you proactively try to address it. We have gone from consistently trying to increase the capital budget for those improvements year after year after year. The other way, and we're successful for sure, but we're below where we should be if we want to follow that 200-year standard. The other way to look at it is, we're not going to put anything in our capital budget for infrastructure, like water main improvement, until it breaks. If it breaks, then we'll replace it. So it's a little bit more reactive, probably not, and it's not the philosophy we've taken, but that's the other way that many agencies look at it, where if there's a break, do the analysis, do the improvement, and just almost wait for it to happen. We've been much more proactive. And the other thing too, we've been very fortunate where even, just the last 10 years or so, where there was almost no funding at any level of government for drinking water purposes, whether it's infrastructure or treatment. Now, there has been considerable grant opportunities at the federal level, at the state level. The county and many of the towns have used some of the ARPA funds to push our projects forward. So where there was almost no money 10 years ago, now was ARPA's gone, so that's one funding source that's out, that's no longer with us, but like bipartisan infrastructure bill is out there. So there are opportunities, and we are very, very aggressive with trying to secure those funds and very successful in getting those funds for projects, including water mains.
I think we're one of the largest users of WIA money in the state for water infrastructure. The Water Authority gets a lot of grants for a lot of stuff like that. But like Jeff says, we're much more proactive. We have a much more robust monitoring system out there so that we're looking for the stuff that's really, the worst of the worst and replacing that rather than taking a broad brush on
And
things.
just in terms of the monitoring, I've toured your facilities. You have quite extensive equipment and also a team of scientists, I believe, that work for you that are constantly looking at the water, testing the water. Can you speak a little bit about that? Like how extensive is it? What is the staff? What are you looking at? How that process goes along? It's quite profound.
Go ahead.
So our laboratory is the largest groundwater laboratory in the country. We've got almost 50 people in that lab that all they do is test samples. So when Jeff talks about 200,000 samples, they're constantly rolling in. And we have individuals that are out on the road sampling the distribution system on a regular basis. So every day they're coming in with samples. Again, with 600 wells, you've got to sample those wells at least quarterly, and a lot of them more frequently than that, depending on what's going on at that particular well. So I always tell people that, the wells that we have are like our children. And when I say to somebody, Foxcroft number 2, if I'm talking to one of my lab people, they know the water quality in their heads. They know what's going on at that well field. And our operations people are the same way. We know where the challenges are. And that's a step that's a big step right there to have that type of strategic understanding of what's going on in the water system. So that's definitely something that we pride ourselves on.
I think the other thing too with the lab that's important to note, with the chemical compounds that we test for, right? The health department will say you need to test quarterly, you need to test semi-annually. They will set the standards, and then often we will test more frequently than that. And I think that's something that even when it comes to changing out carbon, we change out typically when it's approaching an MCL. Like if there's a fear that a X chemical compound may exceed a certain limit, we'll get in there and make sure that we change. Carbon is typically what's used to remove these most of the chemical compounds. But we'll be proactive and get in there and remove it when it gets half.
Yeah, we like to change it when it's half. We try to, if the state says the MCL is 10, we try to achieve 5. We try to do things at half the MCL. And we're very proud of that because a lot of suppliers will wait until the carbon is completely exhausted and you're at the MCL and now we're going to change it. We don't do that. So we're testing it frequently, we're looking at it, and that's just in everybody's DNA. That's the way we operate, Jeff.
We've also, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I'm saying, when you came to the Water Authority, you saw that, it was like, wow, that's the way you operate? People don't know about that.
Yeah.
Jeff has been very big about getting that word out and letting people know about that, because again, it's a very different way from a lot of other suppliers in the way they operate.
Also with innovation, right? I know we're talking a lot and we could go on all day, I don't have time now. And we're very proud of our job, the work we do. I know everyone's time is important, but just real quick, we've also led with innovation. So there's chemical compound 1,4-dioxane, which is prevalent across Suffolk County, but not really nationally, right? So the federal government, they look at chemical, like should we set a regulation of this? What's its impact? Where is it found? And with dioxane, they've sort of taken a step back, but here on Long Island, it's widespread. There wasn't an effective treatment method to remove it from drinking water. So I decided 12, 15 years ago, we had all of our scientists, all of our operations people, everybody in a room much like this. We heard all the facts about where it was detected, what the health effects could be, whether the feds were going to set a limit, and what should we do. We decided to do the work, invest the money, work with outside consultants along with our engineering team to develop treatment that was then approved by New York State. We were sort of teaching New York State, about what we wanted to do and pulling them along. They approved it. Now it's an advanced oxidation process. Now that's widely used by every supplier in the state. We developed that.
Yeah, and ours was the first in the state to be approved, yeah.
So things like that.
Federal level, the EPA is the
lead agency?
Yeah, they are for most
on
compounds. For 1,4-dioxane, they haven't set a standard on it.
And funding and grants that, flow either to you or through the state?
So it depends on the funding stream. The state in 2017, roughly, Governor Cuomo and the legislature established a drinking water quality council, and then pretty much an annual funding stream of, I think it was 400 or 500 million dollars
Yep.
annually for drinking water purposes. That has been continuous since then. So we've taken advantage of the state funding stream. The EPA does have through, what's the other state? The funding goes from the EPA to the state agency.
The drinking water revolving fund.
State revolving fund. So it's federal funds that go to the state revolving fund that pass through. Then you have the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Then you have congressional direct spending. That's new the last couple of years, that the congressmen and the senators are, sometimes giving out, sometimes not. And then you have, they've been very good to us. And then you have what we use, WIFIA and ARPA. And ARPA has ended, but there's still, even, I just hung up with the county executive's office because there's a project that we're looking to complete using the last bit of remaining funds before that expires at the end of the year.
That's all great. Yeah, it's wonderful that there's the recognition on all levels of government that the water quality is so important and that there's funding out there. I mean, we've been very fortunate too. We have some sewer, wastewater treatment plants that we're looking to construct, and we're getting a lot of funding for that. Actually, now that reminds me, Janice Shear, our land use administrator, she mentioned that she had a meeting with the Center for Clean Water at Stony Brook, and they said something about technology that would replace the carbon. Are you aware, and is that something that's actually
We're very supportive of
happening?
that. We actually, how much did we give them? 100,000?
Yeah.
So that is to use biochar, which is to take biomaterials like seaweed, things of that nature, I guess, like wood chips and things like that. They can turn that into char or carbon that can then be reagglomerated into little pellets, and they could use that in replace of the granular activated carbon that we buy. Most of that comes from China. So it would be a way to produce that stuff domestically out of materials that was really waste material. So yeah, so they're getting rolling on that now.
Oh, good.
And
We're
do work
funding
with
a portion of it.
Yep.
We have, we created a dedicated fund for research and development. We opted in after many years of being resistant to is it OnSource? No, the service line provider,
HomeServe.
HomeServe. You've probably been bombarded with these
Commercials.
commercials and
apologize for that.
for a long time. But not just us. We held off for forever. I've been CEO for 17 years, maybe probably even before that. But many of the other utilities use the service. We finally opted in, but with that, it was a payment of $200,000 and then some annual money. We're taking all that money and we're using it for R&D. One of the projects is with Stony Brook Center for Clean Water Technology.
The nice thing about the Water Authority is that we have our own engineering group. So we don't have to hire a consultant to help us with pretty much anything. We use consultants for a couple of things, like when we rehabilitate tanks. They climb the tanks and they determine where the work needs to be done. But we have a staff of professional engineers, mechanical, electrical engineers. They can design all our filtration systems in-house. And then we have a staff that acts like a general contractor, and we build things on our own. So it's really a really nice model for how an efficient water utility can operate, and it allows us to move quickly. So if we determine, or if we take a well sample and we find that PFAS is all of a sudden shown up in a well, and it's going to mean that we're going to have to take it out of service, we already have contracts in place to do things like clear an area and put in a concrete pad and to buy a filter. And our engineering group jumps into action, and they do that. And we can have a pad, from the time that we get a bad sample to the time we have a concrete pad, it can be a month. We can move that quickly. And then we have annual contracts for things like filters. So we always have filters coming in. We know that there's a filter, and we may have an idea that a filter is going to go to one place back in June, and by July, that filter is being redirected to a different location because there's a higher priority well that needs filtration. So we're really good at rolling that stuff out. We have 220, I believe, granular activated carbon systems in our fleet of wells, so 600 wells, 200 systems. So, and just changing out that carbon, sometimes we're doing 3 or 4 carbon changeouts a week, which is something that most water suppliers I talk to on Long Island, then we have a close relationship, like Jeff says, they might do 1 or 2 a summer. And we're doing them on a weekly basis. So it really gives us a lot of latitude, and it shows, because it allows us to keep wells in service that otherwise would be out for years at a time while we found a consultant and then a supplier, a general contractor to do all that. We cut through all that red tape.
That sounds great. What's the,
Oh,
The,
you want to do that?
Yep.
Okay,
Let's
all right.
we'll run through it.
So I don't want to bore you with PowerPoint, kill you, whatever they say. with
oh, we're
PowerPoint.
interested in what
Well,
you have
just
to
so
tell us.
I'm not sure if we got these topics or if they
Yeah.
were suggested or if we came up with them, but, a couple of important topics that directly impact, the area out here in the East End and stuff, things that we've been sharing with different municipalities and elected officials, so.
So just to go through, I titled this Our Biggest Challenges. And I'm going to just go highlight some of the big stuff that we're working on that definitely challenges the organization. You all know about PFOA and PFOS. I think the Hampton Bays put in large vessels at the main plant there to take care of PFOS. I told you that we have many filtration systems for that. But the nice thing about where we're at right now is that we meet the federal standard. So the New York State standard is 10 parts per trillion. The federal standard is 4. The federal standard doesn't go into effect until 2031. We're compliant with that now. So we're very happy with that.
That's great.
And we continue to put in more treatment systems, though. Even though we're compliant with that, there are many places where, in order to be compliant, we actually have to blend. So we're gonna have one well on a filter and another well that's at 6. So the filtered well provides water at 0. The well at 6 now, you put them together and the combined effluent is 3 parts. It's below the drinking water standard, the federal drinking water standard. But what we want to do is we want to have filtration on every well so that every well is non-detect. So that's where we're going. So we're not done putting in those filtration systems. And I don't know, we didn't talk about suing the polluters that caused this PFAS contamination, but the Water Authority has been super aggressive with that and has recovered a lot of money in order to pay for a lot of these filtration systems that we're putting in. So the thing that you might have heard about recently is out in East Hampton, and it's related to a battery fire that occurred about 3 years ago. And once again, our laboratory had developed their own method, and this is something that when you have your own laboratory with very, very talented people, they can do something like this. But they developed their own method for looking for these ultra-short compounds, ultra-short PFAS chain compounds that are out there. The PFOA and the PFAS are referred to as long-chain compounds, so they're much larger, they're much easier to filter out. The short-chain ones, they're much smaller and they're tougher to filter out. As it turned out, they came up with this method for sampling and analyzing for them. They did it on all of our wells, and they didn't find it on any of our wells except one well field, and that well field is in Bridgehampton, in actually East Hampton. And that's what you've heard all about. It's related to the fire that occurred at the battery storage facility. We're working right now. We filed suit against the polluters, and now we're trying to figure out how we're going to recover those wells. So right now, we've taken 3 of the 4. Actually, pretty much the well field is pretty much out of service at this point. We have one well that has levels that are relatively low but still high by our standards. And so that well is in an emergency call situation. If there was a bad fire of some kind, it may have to come on for that, but it hasn't operated since the end of June.
June
So
26th.
How's that affecting the water supply for certain people?
it's a
in
challenge.
Southampton?
It's a challenge. So that means that, in simple terms, the water tank that's close by on Spring Close Highway runs pretty low during the summertime, and then we get into the peak periods. We're able to hold on right now. We're asking people to conserve. We're doing a really aggressive conservation push, and it's July 16th today. We're okay, but it is a challenge.
And that's something
It is
we
a challenge.
monitor, of course, this time of year. Most of the water that we pump for the year, this roughly 75 billion gallons a year, most of it is pumped from May to September. Why is that? Irrigation systems. So the last several years, it's got to be probably the 4th or 5th year, we have been, I think it's the 4th year, very aggressive with budgetarily financing a communications plan to educate residents.
That's what we wanted to
Yeah.
ask about too.
Yeah.
What are you doing about that?
We put several $100,000 a year And for a long time, with the board is, we have email, we have our own message, we have a lot of public meetings. Is it worth the investment? So we think it is, and we've convinced the board, and they've been very supportive with annually supporting it. And it could be everything from commercials. We've done social media spots. We've worked with other municipalities, last couple of months, spending a lot of time with Supervisor Burke Gonzalez and the mayor, Mayor Larson, the county executive. They've been very much involved trying to focus on East Hampton to bring that usage down. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I wish I could come here and say, we've had I can show you dramatic, decrease with our messaging. There are so many different factors that we're trying to sort of evaluate and to see how effective it is, but I also think that habits don't change overnight. And the brand, Coca-Cola didn't become Coca-Cola or McDonald's overnight. It takes years and years of messaging and communication and education from us to the residents to have our voice heard. So we're going to continue it, and we think we will eventually we will be successful. As Joe said, the system's holding strong across the board. We get reports every single morning, the different pressure zones, the tank levels, areas of stress. If a storm rolled through, we know just about everything, and so far we've been okay.
Do you do long-term usage projections or growth projections, whatever you want to call it, with regard to, water supplies 20 years from now with the kind of growth, that we've experienced?
We do a lot of that. We do a lot of planning for the future. The Water Authority is actually, our system is broken up into 52 pressure zones. So we look at them by pressure zone to see where the growth occurs. And then we have a 5-year plan that we have for the construction of new wells to address growth. And the growth continues.
Our growth projections are, and East Hampton are off the charts, from what we said, where we'd be 20 years ago and where we are today. Yeah.
We've also, and I give Joe credit for this, because for many, many years, over the 75 plus years, the answer when there was growth was put in a new well. Spend $1 million, test the water quality, find the piece of property, get all that stuff together, get treatment if needed, and then develop well. 10 years ago or so, Joe came back from a conference and he said, you know what? He goes, we're thinking about, maybe we should look at this a little differently. And it makes perfect sense with some of the direction we're getting from the state DEC, who approves all of our wells. Instead of necessarily always looking to drill a well, do additional storage. So we've been aggressive in trying to create ground and elevated storage tanks, 1 million gallons plus, to try to hold water to meet that peak demand, right? And meet the supply. The tank then will decrease like it does, every morning now. The wells are running, tanks are full, tanks decrease, and then sprinklers go off, and then everything goes back up for the day, right? And then this is the cycle we live in. But having an additional supply for emergencies and to meet that, demand, I think is really smart and long-term in our best interest. So we've been doing a lot of that.
That sounds a great idea.
At Bridgehampton, at our well field in East Hampton, where we have the 4 wells that are out of service, we're going to construct a ground storage tank there.
Just in terms of use, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in the past the Suffolk County Water Authority did incentive-based programs, and I'm not sure if that's still ongoing.
Absolutely.
Very much
Can
so.
you, and you might be talking about this already in your slides, so forgive me if I'm going ahead, but can you talk a little bit about those incentive-based programs?
Sure. So we have a long list of rebates that we provide to people for doing all kinds, for putting in smart irrigation controllers. That's one of the ones that we really have focused on, because you know about these controllers, I assume, right? They're Wi-Fi enabled. They look at the weather forecast, and if it's going to rain tomorrow, they will not allow the irrigation system to go on. So some of the information that we've gotten from the irrigation people have told us that they'll save up to 30% of what a normal person would use with just a standard controller that runs regardless of what the weather is. So that's really important. But we have it for everything from solar pool covers to smart shower heads. There's a long list on our website, and we give out over $100,000 a year in credits to people for rebates for using water saving devices.
You have a tiered billing system too for the
Yes.
big offenders.
Yeah, so it goes up pretty steeply, actually, if you fall into the next category, 88,000 gallons,
Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we bill quarterly, and there's a flat use of service, just to have the service. It's about $30 per quarter. And then we base it on, consumption, right? And then once you hit a certain tier, you would then jump into that much higher tier. Most folks stay under that second tier, most residential parcels and property owners and stuff stay under that second tier. They may jump into it during the summer months, right, because of irrigation and things like that. But overwhelmingly, on the residential side, they stay in that lower tier.
Right.
And we have talked about doing a third tier. There's been some discussion over the years about whether we need like a super user tier. And, primarily it comes from a lot of the requests come from the East End when folks are on the story, what do they call it? Water hog story.
Yeah,
I think they
that's
call it.
always that
Right.
story in the
Yeah,
paper.
stories and,
Public shaming, you'd think that would work, but.
Yeah, we're not into shaming anybody, that's not how we roll. But we have data, and we've looked at it on numerous occasions. We're looking to do every 5 years, we do a rate study. We hire an independent consultant to come in to look at our structure and to see if there are opportunities, whether it's appropriate, does it support the organization, is it too high, is it too low? And to give us guidance to the board, and then the board can take that in and then make a determination. We'll be doing that over the next year again, and I'm sure a third tier will come up and we'll consider it.
All right, so anyway,
Carrot and the stick approach,
What's that?
the carrot and the stick,
you have to do both.
yeah.
You know? And look, I mean, we're better now at looking at consumption. Our old metering infrastructure was antiquated, and, there were a lot of meters that weren't working properly. We're working on improving that. We've got meters now, we do drive-by readings. We're now looking to move to completely wireless readings where we can read almost like continuously what consumption looks like. So if somebody calls in and says, I've got a high bill, we can look right now and see what you consumed last night. So that's the next step in that. And once we have that technology in place, we'll have a much better handle on where the water is all going.
Yeah.
Because it's tough to tell, right? When you just read a meter once a quarter, it's very hard to say, exactly how much water somebody used, but what was the peak and where did it all
When
occur?
did they use it?
When did you use it? We need to know more about that. So we're going to be embarking on a project to do that very soon.
Is there a better time for people to irrigate, to run their systems? I mean,
Well, I can tell you,
What's the
just from
recommendation?
with respect to pressure, the time is not during the peak, right? So the peak for us starts, and probably for the same thing for Hampton Bays, it starts at about midnight and it peaks at about 6 o'clock in the morning. So that overnight period is really not the time to irrigate. I always tell people if you're going to irrigate, start irrigating at night at like 8 o'clock at night and be done before midnight. Because that gives the lawn time to absorb the water that you put on it. It doesn't evaporate. You still got plenty of nightfall there. And like I said, if you water during the peak period, you're just bringing down the pressure, you're lowering the level of tanks. It's just not good for anybody.
We've
So-
passed resolutions, our board, that is asking for odd even watering based on your house number. Like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that type of stuff. We, again, see sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it isn't. We usually see a decrease on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have not seen that significant decrease this year as much as we have in the past.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit more
But
consistent.
people usually set their controllers for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And
Well, you're
most people
seeing
don't
the
irrigate
Tuesday
every
and
week.
Thursday off because that's when most people get their lawns cut and the landscapers
Yeah.
turn the irrigation off the day they cut the lawn.
There you go.
Oh, Tuesdays and Thursdays?
inside information.
Okay.
Wednesday's, a bigger day too, but Thursday's a big lawn cut day and most systems are off on Thursdays.
And then nobody does anything on the weekends because that's when they're home and they're using the lawn or they might be
Yeah.
having a party. So consumption on the weekend is usually not as high as during the week, but Monday morning, we get slammed.
Right.
Monday morning is the biggest morning of the week.
I mean, you can look through the comments on, anything that you guys put out there about odd even watering or, people limiting their usage, and it's all the same comments. I pay my bills, I pay my taxes, I'm gonna
Right.
use the water that I wanna use.
This is my right.
And I feel like all of the people that I speak to on a regular basis, the people that are actually concerned about their usage or actually willing to help out are the people that don't use enough water to
It
make a
doesn't
big
make that much of a
difference
difference.
anyway. It's these giant,
So we've struggled with that, and we understand that. We build our system, right, to meet this peak demand, right? So we literally spend millions of dollars of your, right, of your dollars to meet this summer demand. When during the winter, many of our wells are taken out of service. We pump, like I said, 75% of our water between May, June, until September, October. Rest of the year, if it's just domestic use and it's not irrigation, flat. It's very flat. But when we on several occasions have tried aggressive pointed outreach to property owners on the East End, property management companies, to try to get the message out about conservation, we haven't been successful. We really haven't.
because I'm telling you, it's the user, it's the end user, it's that property owner that's saying, I don't care, I will have a green lawn, I'm only out here for 2 months, my lawn better be perfect. They get a brown spot, they wanna know why, they want the water dumped up, I mean, it's just an ongoing battle, and it's, and it's something that we all take for granted. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning a couple weeks ago, turned on the faucet, we had no water. And it took an hour for us to get water pressure back. So, I mean, it's an issue and it's a problem, and we're seeing it, but, it's changing a mindset for people. It's their mindset is, I pay my bills. That's their mindset. Not that this is a finite thing. And we're seeing, out in the Long Pond Greenbelt, some of our vernal ponds are all dried up now. They don't even come back in the summer months. I mean, it's a real issue. I mean, I'm sure some of your wells you're dealing with saltwater intrusion now because you dropped the levels. I mean, how much of an issue is that turning out to be? I mean, more so than contamination. Once you get to saltwater, then you're treating for a whole nother set of
That's,
issues.
potentially fatal to a well. South Shore, we're not experiencing saltwater intrusion. We're more concerned about, in some areas we are, but North Fork, just because of the aquifer there and the limitations that it has. Saltwater intrusion, it obviously could be very harmful. What we see typically is if we have elevated levels of chlorides and then we back off on pumping that well, it'll decrease, it'll recede, and then it'll come back and like next year. So we have to actively manage that and make sure that we don't have that as a significant issue because it could take the whole well field out.
Well, why don't we talk about that, the South Hole project, because that's, we've gotten, I don't know if that's in your PowerPoint.
Yeah, so this is all what we're talking about, so, just so you know, in case you don't, I mean, the Water Authority has extended water mains to places where people have contaminated private wells. We're just finishing up a project near Old Country Road now, that's in the town of Southampton. It's only about 60 homes, but we've done ones where in Manorville.
That we
Riverhead.
funded.
Yeah, we did provide
We
funding for
funded.
that.
Yeah. But we've done projects in Manorville. We're doing South River Road right now along Nugent Road there, 24. We're bringing water to those folks. So there are a lot of people that have benefited from, a lot of this is WIA money, ARPA money, county grant money that we've used
But,
to
and this
get
was
these
something
projects
too,
done.
I say this all the time. I never thought I would spend as much time as I have looking at these areas that are not connected to the Water Authority, that private wells, that have high levels of compounds that are harmful, and then working the coordination between the different levels, the jurisdictions, levels of government, whether it's county, state, health department, local elected officials, to try to then get those folks tested and then connected. It's probably 25 or 30%, where when I first started, it was not even something that was on our radar. But because of the advanced testing methods and the ability to detect for things that weren't known years ago, this is all happening. And it's to the public's benefit. It's a good thing. But there must be 70 or so or more of these private survey areas across the county from the health department that they're looking at to connect. That area that Joe just mentioned in South River Road, Northern Brookhaven, right on the Riverhead border, essentially had the highest levels of PFAS in the county until we tested in Orient. The county tested in Orient. Now Orient is by far the highest.
But anyway, we're
And I'll
actively
try to
working
keep it
on
quiet
this.
so we can get going. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Chime in anytime you want. So we talked a lot about conservation. I don't think we need to talk about that anymore, but that just does give you an idea of some of the reasons, wind sensors, pool covers. We do outreach. That's Ty Fuller. He's our strategic initiatives head, and he's done commercials for us so that we can get.
And there's a lot of people taking those rebates on those smart irrigation controllers and just
tremendous.
bypassing the smart part of the irrigation controller too. So there's no guarantee. I mean, it's nice that you do that, but it's providing a rebate for people that, unless you intend to use it the way
You gotta set it up. And you
you're
gotta
paying
use
them to use it, it's, I've seen rain sensors underneath gutters and, it's,
They gotta work.
they gotta work and they gotta use
That
them.
technology is getting better too from where it was even 5 or 10 years ago, most definitely.
Why wouldn't people allow the rain sensor to work? I mean, that
Because they
makes no
don't want to
sense.
get behind on their watering, and if it turns off because rain is forecast and the rain doesn't come or it isn't enough to where they would make up with their irrigation, then they're behind a day of watering.
Oh, but it's not, it turns off at just a forecast or actual rain?
It's a smart, it's Wi-Fi, it goes by the forecast.
It's looking to say, hey, if it's gonna rain
So-
tomorrow, we're not gonna irrigate
I
tonight.
see.
People don't,
They won't, they don't
trust
wanna
the
get
forecast.
behind. Yeah, mm-hmm.
Anyway, so one of the big projects that we're working on now is providing water to the North Fork. So for us, the North Fork is kind of a segregated system from the rest of the water authority. It's not connected to everything else. When you're connected to adjacent pressure zones, if you have a shortage in one zone, you can open a valve and you can dump water from one zone to another. You can move water around. We don't have any of that type of flexibility on the North Fork. The North Fork is a captive audience. There's no connection to anything. So the North Fork is served by a series of
That's
very
because of
small
Riverhead.
wells.
So we have to go through.
Yeah, Riverhead is our-
right? Riverhead blocks, they serve their own, they have their own water district. So Southold isn't connected to us because of Riverhead.
It's kind of like Hampton Bays. It's in the middle of the water authority, right? It's kind of trapped, and it provides all the water that you need for Hampton Bays with the Hampton Bays wells. So we've been supplying water to them for well over 20 years. We had taken over the Greenport system. That was the beginning of it, and we built the system out as people have demanded additional water. But the whole system out there is run or provide, services provided by 60 small size wells. So where back in the West, we can have a well that's 1,000 or 1,300 gallons a minute. On the North Fork, because the aquifer is very thin, it's typical to have wells that are 100 or 200 gallons a minute. So you need many, many more wells in order to supply water to an area. The reason why they're small, though, is because the aquifer is thin, and because if you pump too hard, you're going to bring in salt water. So everything has to be much, much smaller, which means that, the average cost of a well, compared to the mainland is much, much higher, and it serves fewer people. So, delivering water to the North Fork is a much more expensive proposition. And we have to have more treatment in place because of all the farms and irrigation and crop production that they have out there. There's a lot more pesticides, herbicides. We have PFAS in the water out there. So we have more treatment on the wells out there. So, as Jeff said before, we're having a tough time getting more well permits out of the DEC. They're being more restrictive with them, and for good reason. It's hard to find a good place to site a well out on.
Don't people there have a lot of just wells that they use for irrigation?
The irrigation wells that I'm talking about are the big ones that they use for farms. So that, there are quite a few farms out there, and they have very large diameter wells. They're not restricted in the way they operate the way we are, so they don't have to monitor the water quality on a farm well. So, they're using an awful lot of water. We're kind of competing for the same resource, very small resource out there. So it's a challenge for us. And like Jeff said, we have to rotate wells. We have to constantly watch the chloride levels in wells, because if we pump too much and when we get to the end of the summer season, we like to shut wells off because we're getting to the point where, we're providing water that has high chlorides in it. So we have to back off on them, and we have to constantly manage that. It's getting to the point out on the North Fork where it's unmanageable, it's unsustainable. They continue to connect up, right? There are people out there, there's still 3,000 or so private wells out there. And people, as they move from the city out to the North Fork, which is what's happening in a lot of cases, people don't want to rely on a private well. They're concerned about the quality of the well. And, if you look at what we test for, testing for 400 compounds, even if you're just testing for the minimum of 250 compounds, if you wanted to do those tests, let's just say annually on your private well, it would cost you thousands of dollars. And people don't do that. And people recognize that, and they say, you know what, instead of me worrying about the water that I'm going to drink, I'm just going to connect to the water authority. So we get hundreds of requests every year to connect up to the water system. Now, it's not easy because a lot of times we have to run water mains, and sometimes the cost of that, which is borne by the homeowner, people don't do it. But even with that, there are plenty of people that are continually converting from private wells to Suffolk County Water. So when you look at that and you look at where we're at right now, and where we're at is like right here, right? In the summertime, there's a tank in Greenport, the Moores Lane tank. That tank gets down to very, very low levels, single digits, such that if there was ever a fire or some type of emergency, we would have a tough time providing water. So there's really very little more that we can do in the North Fork to provide additional water. And when you do that forecast and you look out and you look at all those private wells that are going to convert over, and then you look at the fact that the wells that are out there are already compromised, and we need to back off even more on their production. Right now, what we're doing is unsustainable. We're gonna lose wells if we continue to run them at the rates that they're gonna be run. So we have to back off on their production. So if you look at that loss of production plus the increased demand as people convert over, we need another source of water. And we've done an analysis of it, and we have come up, with our analysis shows that we're gonna need like 6,000 gallons a minute of water, of additional water, to get them out to 2050. So the Water Authority is embarking on a plan to do this. I know that that's hard to read. I'll leave you a couple of copies of this if you don't.
That would be
So
great.
we had initially, and this is a project that really should have been undertaken maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I wish I had pushed for this initiative a long time ago to address it, because this is a long-term solution to an area that just does not have enough water. And we've made significant progress since we've sort of initiated it back a year and a half ago or so. We've had multiple public meetings, including Southampton Town, Riverhead, Southold. We put together, heard comments from the public. The town was notified.
We had scoping sessions about a year ago.
Scoping sessions. We've hired consultants, CDM Smith, to do on the water analysis side, and Nelson and Pope on the engineering environmental side. And it's all sort of coming together. It's coming together where we expect over the next couple of weeks their draft DEIS to be completed, to be submitted to my board for our approval. And then we will put it back out on the street, make it available to the public, hold additional scoping sessions to hear from the public, and then hopefully wrap it up by end of the late fall.
The fall, I would say.
Yeah, sometime in the late fall. And move forward. We think that we could probably finish the project in as little as 18 months. We think we can do it. The good thing, I think, and you may want to hear, we're taking water from where we have it to where we need it. So the South Shore Low Zone has the water availability already existing without additional wells, right? Existing that we can pull from the south to run it to the north.
Well, that's what people here are concerned about, that it's going to impact the town of Southampton and its residents. And, pulling, somebody, said when you pull the water, there can be saltwater intrusion here as a result.
So, our CDM is our consultant. We've asked them to take a look at all of that. So that's going to be part of the DEIS when that gets published. They've done a complete analysis of not only the impact of taking the water out of let's call it the West Hampton, East Mauritius kind of area, and what's the impact of bringing in this water, right? Because this is water that's outside the hydrogeological cycle. Now you're bringing this into the North Fork, and this almost looks like more rain, right? So what's this going to do to the water table on the North Fork? Theoretically, and what it's going to do is it's going to raise it, right? Because if you're bringing in water from the outside and you've already got rain that's coming down, you've got recharge that goes in, right? Anytime anybody uses any water in a home on the North Fork, that water goes back into the ground. So all this additional water that we bring out looks like additional recharge out there. So that's what CDM is going to look at. They're going to say, okay, what's the impact on the South Shore Low Zone where the water is coming from? That's going to lower the aquifer a little bit. And what's the impact on the North Fork? That's going to raise the aquifer a little bit. So that's their task.
That's what you're gonna look at how it'll impact the water supply
That'll be
here.
released in the next week or two. It's being wrapped up now, and then we'll have public meetings. We'll be back at our facility in West Hampton. I think we've scheduled the date. Is it the 18th?
I think it's the 18th, 19th, and 20th, but don't hold me. to it.
Yeah.
I attended a couple of the meetings on the
did?
North Fork
Okay.
about this time last year, last September, whatever it was. And it did seem, you guys, I think, did a nice
this is the
job
next
presenting.
step.
Some people seemed to be concerned up there that it was gonna encourage development. I heard comments like that,
We heard that from
but.
the town supervisor and others in Southold, and I've just been a friend for a long time, and I keep saying, Al, we don't control development. You do. The town does, and the town board, and they have been partners, and they've been very aggressive with trying to do what they can to reclaim water and to encourage conservation.
Right.
They've been very vocal and supportive, but it's not going to be enough to meet the demand today. This pipeline, right, addresses today plus a little bit for the future. The concern is, we need to do our messaging with conservation, for years to come. We need to do the pipeline, and we need the town, especially in Southold, because of the condition of their aquifer there, to be aggressive in trying to reclaim every drop of water they can.
When does it get to the point where we're asking people to do this? Like, it's a finite resource. When do you get to the point where these people using millions of gallons get their meter downsized?
So that has been part of the discussion, enforcement. We passed a resolution saying odd even. We passed a resolution, encouraging the conservation and the rebates and the initiatives, but we're not the water police. We don't have the ability through our statute to go out and to knock on the door and say, we're gonna give you a fine. We've tried the shame route. A couple of years ago, we were out here in Southampton early in the morning with reporters. They wanted the good visuals and stuff, with a couple of staff from customer service and operations. Whether that was effective or not, I don't know. So we drafted a resolution that we circulated to villages and towns saying this would be the framework, our suggestion of a framework to take that next step if you want to do enforcement. We circulated to the county too. We had discussions with, I think, Southampton Village at the time. I think this is going back several years, prior mayor, but it was not enacted. I think Southold has been aggressive, but not on the enforcement side, everything but the enforcement side. So municipalities are looking at it, but there's not a really clear, easy solution.
So this is would be a town code type of issue is what you're,
Yeah.
Because these huge homes, they have giant meters coming into the house. They have separate hookups just for their irrigation systems out on the street. I mean, the usage is just
right?
unimaginable. And I think when we looked, I think I was here when I think we did look at that legislation, but the fear for that legislation was you're gonna end up, impacting people that are using what I would say is a normal amount of water, you should be able to wash your car, you should be able to, minimal things. And I mean, we're talking about millions of gallons
So I
versus.
think the response to that is, my use, I can determine my use. Why should you tell me what's important to me? Right? I don't tell you can wash your car, but I can't wash my 3 cars. Or I have a 1/4 acre and you have 2 acres. So I think if I'm paying for it, I should get it. We also don't have the ability to deny someone a service, right? If we do this all the time through our new service application process, we determine, do we have the supply to meet the projected demand? If we have the supply, we approve it.
Yeah.
If we don't, we will say, developer, most times, you will need to build the infrastructure to pay for this, right? And that's what we
So
do
we'll
on
do
a
that.
frequent basis
Same for
too.
wells.
Well, when I was on the town planning board before this, and we used to, of course, the size of what you build or whatever's controlled by, Suffolk County Health Department, has a lot of control over that issue. But, we kind of used to have, conversations about we're controlling the outflow, but, or through that method. But we have no control over how much people are, pulling in, at the planning board level. And the question where we started was, are we gonna run out of water?
We do more now when somebody comes in with an application, so if somebody wants to build a development of some kind, we tell them to tell us what their estimated use is going to be. And then, we find that a lot of engineers in their estimates, they're really wrong a lot of times. And we'll go back and we'll say, you know what, these numbers are not good, we can't hook you up based on this, go back and sharpen your pencil and see what you can do to reduce the landscaping that's in the property and use less water. And it's been successful in a lot of cases. There are a lot of developers that will work with us.
I
and
will
find
say
ways to
this,
cut.
in Suffolk, right, we replenish the aquifer more than we pump out annually, right? Based on all of the information we know
Yeah,
from
it's still a
USGS.
surplus.
So we're taking in more through rainfall than we're putting out in Suffolk. I don't know if that's the same in
But there are
Nassau.
problems in
Isolated
areas
areas.
like these peninsulas, like, Montauk is an issue, the North Fork is an issue. There's just not a lot of land surface to get the recharge that you need. So what happens? You salt up the wells.
Just with respect to the pipeline project, I asked that there be an open line of communication with the Peconic Estuary Partnership. I know that they have expressed some, interest in being part of the dialogue and the conversation. I'm sure you're in communication with Dr. Joyce Novak. I just ask that if you can please make sure that that line of communication remain open, just because of the different habitat work that they do and the Peconics and.
We've had conversations with Dr. Joyce, and I believe they submitted official comments during the first scoping session. And we expect to have, packed house, at our next 3 public hearings.
Okay.
And we will, us working with the consultants, will answer every question that we get and provide that back to the public for consumption.
When you do look at the North Fork and how much water they use currently, it's a tiny fraction. I think we used 1.5 billion gallons of water last year on the North Fork. We pumped 72 billion gallons to serve all of our customers. So they're really a very small portion of the demand. And the amount of water that we're talking about moving, we're not going to shut the wells down on the North Fork. The North Fork is still going to produce water. We're just going to reduce the operation of the wells that are in bad shape right now. And we're going to take some wells completely out of service. And that's going to be the initial water that flows through. And the initial water that flows, the average flow through this pipeline when it's all said and done is like 1,000 gallons a minute, which is less than one well in the main body of the island. So because the North Fork is small, there are 10,000 customers out there right now, and they've got so much preserved property that the possibility of additional growth is really not that much. The big concern is it's those conversions of private wells and the loss of the production from the wells that are out there now. Something has to be done to support that.
But I mean, if you say there's 10,000 customers, but there's a lot more people living there, so if everybody decides, like you said, a lot of people are concerned about it, they might all want to connect, or maybe they won't, I don't
Well,
know.
we're assuming that they will want to connect.
Yeah.
We're assuming that those 3,000 customers at some point are going to connect over time.
They may
Because
be
people are
forced
gonna
to
wanna-
because of contamination
Yeah,
too.
I mean, so,
That's
the levels in Orient are unbelievable. We talk about PFAS at 4 parts per trillion. They've tested private wells out there that have it at 3,000 parts per trillion. So it's a serious, serious problem for those folks.
So, I mean, you had a statement that you made about how when, they come to you and they say, will you be able to service this as far as water capacity is concerned? I'm talking about new developments, increased density, right? In my mind, those individuals, those developers should be paying into your capital plan in addition to just your usage and your service and your hookup. They should be making an investment in your capital because you don't have the capacity, right? If you're putting out notices saying we are at our capacity with our current infrastructure, then you can't put on anybody new because you're already overreaching your capacity. So to make them invest in that capital plan to increase capacity of the overall system to meet their
We
demand.
do that. I mean, we'll make a developer pay for a well. We've had developers in the past that have paid millions of dollars to us for well capacity.
Because you have to evaluate the application and what they're asking for, right? And you said that you do,
It's hard when it's
Request that.
small, somebody's building 5 condos or something like that, but if somebody's coming in, like there's a golf course that's been sat fallow for a long time in the West End, and they want to put 1,500 homes on that. And we told the developer, we don't have the water for that. We need a well field. We said we need 4 acres of property and a well field that's gonna support that. So we do that. I mean, we just can't willy-nilly connect that.
And I think that's a lot of what I'm hearing from the people in Flanders and Riverside regarding this project of taking the water over to the North Fork is they're basically saying, we're here, we're using this resource. They're at capacity for us to where they can't provide us with us being able to just use our water as we want and, but now they're taking it elsewhere. It's not that you're taking it, it's you're investing the money into that system to take that money, that water, and put it somewhere else. And they feel like that investment should be coming into, providing the service and increasing the capacity for what exists.
Well, we are, continuously looking at where we need to make improvements. That's essentially our capital program. Like I said, in East Hampton, we're building a several million, $4 million, $6 million ground storage tank to meet the demand there to hold water. I don't, off the top of my head, know what investments we're making in the Flanders area. I know it's no new wells, but is there anything else that would address long-term in the capital program?
It would
Some
depend on what
concerns?
the impact is. If there is, we're gonna do it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just what we do. When we have a place where we have a problem, we put money into it.
But what did you say, 1,000 gallons a minute?
That's the average flow through the pipeline when it's finally completed.
Yeah.
And it's flowing at its max, the average flow. So there may be peaks, it'll peak at 6,000 gallons a minute. But if you look at the annual average flow, it's equivalent to 1,000 gallons a
I
minute.
guess that's the concern. You're pulling that from the South Fork, right?
Well, but understand
So what's
that
gonna
the
happen to
South
our
Fork has
wells?
tens of, not even tens, hundreds of thousands of gallons a minute. Our system peaks at 500,000 gallons a minute.
But as you said, though, the water is being pulled out on the South Fork. It's eventually going back in, whether you flush the toilet or you put it on your lawn. It's eventually seeping
yeah,
back
it's
in on
recharging.
the South Fork, but now you're taking it
You're
out of the
taking it
South
out of
Fork
the system.
aquifer and you're
No question about it.
dropping it on the North Fork aquifer.
That's
And I
correct.
know you said that
Yeah.
that's the study and that's the
That's what
whole
they're
thing
doing,
that's being looked at, but I understand the concerns.
Absolutely.
Listen,
So-
I get it, and that's the reason why we're doing our homework and we're presenting all the facts. And this is almost a societal issue, right?
And I
People
mean,
need
thankfully,
water.
you're talking to a board that we also function as commissioners of the Hampton Bays Water District. So we have our water
Same issue
commissioners
there,
meetings,
right?
we go through all our capital projects, we're doing the same thing with meter replacement and, increasing our capacity. But, so we're dealing with it on a much smaller scale than where you're
It's
at.
the same story.
But it's the same, I mean, all of the things that you were
The
mentioning are
wireless
all things
readings,
that we all
yeah.
deal with. The carbon, we're looking at resins for the short chains, we're going through that whole process,
If you
so.
had a small group of customers that were not connected right now, that were, still within the Hampton Bays Water District, and they were screaming that they needed water, their wells were deteriorating, what would you do? You would supply water to them, you'd figure out how to get water to them. And your other customers might scream and say, hey, you're giving them our water. It's the same analysis, it's the same discussion.
Well, I mean, we put
know.
an underground pipe to Dune Road, we put an underground pipe to the south side of the canal. But at the same time, it's still recharging the same aquifer that it's being pulled from. The
But we-
question here is you're pulling
we
it
send
out of
water
ours.
We send millions of gallons of water out to Montauk from East Hampton. We have a pipeline that brings water out to Montauk, and we do it there. And the people of East Hampton could probably scream and say, that water shouldn't go to Montauk. But
In any of your preliminary studies, I mean, I don't know if you've been working with the engineers and everybody who's looking at this, I'm sure you have, but is there any sort of, variable that can be observed in some of the analysis that shows that there would be any kind of decreased availability of water here on the
So
Southampton and the South Fork?
we won't have the report back for at least a week or two.
So you don't have any knowledge on preliminarily?
We'll be able to talk much more in-depth and answer questions once we have that.
How do we confirm that we'll get a copy of the report?
Well, you guys are
EIS.
interested parties.
Yeah.
Right? I can, we'll make sure you get it, of course.
We're
We
gonna,
can send it to you
I assume we're gonna
individually.
post it, we'll
It'll
probably
be
have.
posted on our website. We have I think there's a page dedicated to the project itself. We'll have public hearings in just a few weeks, so.
So can I just ask, so we don't know if there's going to be diminished capacity here. It's thought of that could be based on the pattern of recharge.
I don't anticipate that, to be very honest with you. Diminished capacity, just,
Right.
it's not enough water.
So we should really wait for see what the report says. That's first and foremost. But I guess what I'm also asking is if there is a determined impact, would there be some sort of contingency plan? Would there be some sort of plan in place by the
Well, that's
water
why-
authority to address that?
So that's why you do the DEIS, right? That's why you follow SECRA and you follow the steps in SECRA to get the facts. And then once we have the facts, we will determine how best to proceed. I don't have, these are all hypotheticals,
Yeah.
right? At this
Right.
point, what we did initially when we met with the public was laid out pretty much conceptually, the route and what we plan to do. And that was met, we got a bunch of comments and feedback and stuff, so we took all that in. Then we gave that to the consultant, said, here, run with this, come back with the deep analysis so that we can make determinations and my board can make a determination. So we're not quite there yet. It's a little premature. We could have suggested to wait a month or a few weeks and we'd probably be able to answer more of your questions, but a lot of that is unknown today.
Yeah, no, we're glad you came in preliminarily, and then we'll look for the DEIS
We're
report,
always welcome.
and,
We'll give you the facts.
Yeah.
It's gonna be what it's gonna be, and if something does come up, we guarantee we will work with the consultants and everyone else to get you the answers you need. That's how we operate.
Can I ask one unrelated question? Yeah. Do you get notices of Superfunds? You track the Superfund sites on Long Island? Do you have any, let me get to the, Row Industries in Sag Harbor. I was sent a press release in around March or April saying that the Row Industries Superfund site had been remediated and was basically off the list. I reached out to the EPA to try to get a copy of their report, and they said they'd send it to me. I haven't heard it. Do you guys get notices when Superfund sites are closed?
Do you get them? Because I have gotten notices in the past on the status, if memory serves. We don't have any inventory or a database, but I thought that, if I recall correctly, that I would get notices saying this area is going to be designated a Superfund site. Not if there's been a remediation and it's no longer a site, but do you know what? Off the top
I mean,
of
we
your head?
get notices, we're so tied into the environmental community that when something happens, we know about
I
it.
just thought you might have a copy of this Row Industries final report.
I can
and
check and
I'll
see if we
keep-
have it.
I
Yeah.
will, keep going after the
Industries?
EPA. Yeah, it's in Sag Harbor, and it's right adjacent to the Long Pond Green Belt, which is,
It's
one
a
of our.
closure report, it's
Right,
the
right.
putting it all to bed.
Yeah,
Check.
I'd
We
like
gotta
to,
have it. We'll check.
Yeah.
so, thank you.
Okay. So anyway, so that's the North Fork, and that's the
Okay,
project.
thank you.
There's more that we're talking about, but I think we basically talked about the whole thing here.
Been a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, which is
We
fine.
appreciate your
Yep.
patience.
Okay, so we talked about some of the project benefits. So let's just talk about this final topic here, and that is the Southampton area, the Southampton Village.
Okay.
Speaking of increasing demand and satisfying that, I know that some of you may be aware of our plans or desires to work on a project that involves both the village and the town. And that is up off of North McGee Street and Sabonic Road. There is a high piece of ground there that is owned by the village. And the village is working with us to allow us to put a 2 million gallon storage tank.
And you need the easement for access.
What?
And you needed the easement for access.
Yeah.
So we're right now, we are having the easements appraised. There'd be 3 easements, if I look at the map. So the one all the way to the right, that green kind of parcel, that's a 2-acre parcel that's owned by the village. That's where the gun range is now. That would be where we would put the tank. That pipe you see that runs over to the left, that's our existing pump station that we have there. That's our North McGee pump station. So we would like an easement from the town to cross that town property. We'll directionally drill that, so that'll just be underground. There'll be no disturbance on the surface. So that will allow us to bring water directly from the pump station up to the tank. And not only is there going to be a tank on that property, but there's gonna be an iron removal filter, because we do have issues with iron, not that significant, but we would love to remove the iron from those wells if possible. So we would put a filter up on that property also. That would give us cleaner drinking water for the people in the village.
Is that a
and the
ground
area.
tank or an elevated tank?
A ground tank. So it's a ground storage tank and would have boosters. And that would work similar to what Jeff and I were talking about before. We would fill that tank during the off-peak periods, and we would drain it, or we would boost out of it during the peak periods. So it would be a real advantage to have that. It would be a great long-term improvement for not just the village, but the whole surrounding area. I know they're talking about the hospital possibly moving over to the college property. That's gonna be a big demand for water in a spot where we're a little weak. So this would be helpful to that. But in general, that's the scope of work. There's the access easement that goes down to Sabonic Road. That would be from the town also. So right now, we're in the process of having an appraiser go through the process of coming up with an appraisal. I know Jim Burke and.
Yeah, our town attorney's working with you on
Yeah,
this.
Jim and Janice Scherer, I think, have been out to the site with my chief engineer and looked it over, and they saw it. and Jim gave me some good feedback after he was out there. So this is a great project, and this would be really helpful if you guys were, able to support us with the easement to get in and out of there. We really appreciate that. So that's it, and that, again, that goes to long-term planning and capacity development for the water system. We've got to have that. The growth continues out here in the Southampton area, as you know.
Well, we thank you for coming in. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah, this
Really
was great,
appreciate it.
great, really appreciate it, and,
I'll leave you a couple copies of this.
That'd be great.
If you, I'm sorry I only have two, but.
okay, well, we'll get them to everybody.
Digital copy also, if you want you folks have it.
Thanks to see you.
We can
Thank you
put
so
that on
much.
the
We just
website.
wait.
Yeah.
Reach your way. Thank you for having us.
Thank you
I could
so
just
much.
wait.
Thank you. We'll see you again. When we get the report,
Nice to
we'll
meet
In
you.
a few weeks, whenever you have those.
circulate it
Thank
and
you.
answer
Nice
any
meeting
questions
you.
you have.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Nice meeting you, Kristen.
All right. Okay, so that brings us to our town council and supervisor liaison updates. Tom, do you have anything in particular you want to tell us about?
There are a couple of things. On Monday, the Hampton Bays Chamber of Commerce sponsored a shell abration, which
yeah.
was the shells that have been decorated and put throughout Hampton Bays.
Somehow my calendar got mixed up and I missed that. and I
Oh,
did
well,
want to see it.
it was fun. There were a couple of dozen people there, and Michael was there also. So we did an abbreviated tour. I think there were something like 17 different shells scattered throughout. And we went to 6 or 7 of them, but it was a very nice event, nice group, and some of
Who
the artists
painted the
were there.
shells?
Different local artists painted them, and for a few of them, they had the artist and kind of talked about what their inspiration was. So it was, a fun little event. Yesterday, and Cindy was in on this call, I believe, there was a review of the facilities management plan, the concept plan, I guess, if you will, for Stony Brook, Southampton. There was a presentation, a Zoom call on that, which again, I think was helpful in understanding where they're going with this. Third, had a kind of a working call yesterday, a little bit of a technical call with the folks at Labella who are working on those 5 locations for us for some traffic engineering concepts. Tom Houghton and I had a good call with them to talk about some kind of technical stuff and where they're going. And I think they're going to have some stuff for us maybe in about 6 weeks to
Oh,
look
good.
at. So,
Good. That's great.
yeah,
I'm
very
glad
good.
you're keeping track of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
Michael, what do you got?
Yeah, I also went to I also went to Celebrations with Tom. I just want to give a shout out to Christine Taylor of the Hampton Bays Chamber for all of her work on that. Since we came in, she's been talking about it, and
Yeah,
she had that concept and vision.
Got a
and-
lot of enthusiasm.
And obviously, she worked very closely with members of the Hampton Bays Beautification Committee and Cornell Cooperative, and also PSEG, PSE&G. They really helped out with that, so I want to thank them for all their work. I was at this week the South Shore Estuary Reserve Council meeting. Hosted right here at the Tiana Bay Life Saving Station. It was really nice. A lot of members from all different governments around the Suffolk County came, and there was a discussion and organizations, and there was a discussion on various programs that the SSER is looking to champion in the forthcoming year. 2 in particular that I think is really interesting. They're in the preliminary phase right now of looking at a derelict boat program to provide funding for that. I know that would be helpful for a coastal community like Southampton. Also, they're looking to make some updates to their comprehensive management plan, which we've met with Chris before, Chris Clapp, and he's talked to us about. So they're making some of those adjustments. It was a really nice meeting. Legislator Welker was there. Jackie Fenlon from CPF was there, and Marty Shea. So it was a good meeting, and also me and Bill attended the Hampton Bays CAC meeting last night. A bunch of updates that we gave there on all the various projects in Hampton Bays. and a discussion on various things before the planning board. So,
Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah.
That went well, I hope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, yeah,
good. Thank you, Michael.
sure.
Well, just want to mention that Bill's not here today because his daughter Hannah had her baby boy, Nathan, in the wee hours of the morning.
Oh,
And,
that's
Nathan.
great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So congratulations to Hannah and her family.
Wonderful.
Bill's a grandpa again.
Yep. And he loves it, doesn't he?
That's great.
I'm sure we'll see Nathan walking the halls soon, too.
That's right.
And last night, on the FIMP front, we had a meeting in West Hampton Beach because they are looking to take the town up on the offer to create these erosion control district for West Hampton Beach for their contributions to the FIMP. And Jim Burke and Kelly Doyle were there from our town attorney's office, and Kathleen Murray, and Kathleen did a really comprehensive but succinct, she did a really nice job of laying out exactly how it would work and what would happen. Aram was there too. And so we'll see, and Quag and the Village of the Dunes might want to have the same kind of presentation while they work their way through it. But anyway, Bill, since he's not here, he got some photographs, wanted me to update everyone on this is the Hampton Bays parking lot by the post office. You can see there's great progress, and we'll be ready for the asphalt next week and striping the following week. So the contractor did as promised, got in there and moved as quickly as possible to get it done. The lighting, I understand, is on a little bit of a delay, but we put in the stanchions, and when the lights are available, those can go in separately, but that won't hold up use of the parking lot. So there it is. A lot of work, new drainage, new curbs, new lighting, more parking spaces. So I'm sure the community will appreciate it when it's done.
Do you want to go over the West Hampton?
Yeah. And then the other thing, we have progress meetings every 2 weeks with the contractors on the community center, and it's really coming along. The roof is in place now. The issue with the HVAC, because they put in, curbs, they call them, for the units to go in, but the units aren't going in yet, so they had to put covers on, and we did finally get those last week, and now you can see most of the windows are in. They should finish that this week. And then the doors will go in, and then it's, watertight, and they can start working on the interior. So they still feel confident that we'll be able to have it finished by the end of the year.
It's coming along very nicely.
Yeah, pretty exciting. And then lastly, finishing on another positive note, there was an osprey rescue. And here's a video. Highway called Bill and sent him this video for us to share.
Where was it?
This was a baby osprey fell out of the nest at the Hampton Bays High School football field on Tuesday. A runner at the track saw the bird and called the Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Refuge
wonderful.
Center, who checked out the osprey and determined it was fine and wanted to get it back in the nest. So our Highway Town crew member, Dan Rodriguez, happened to be nearby with his bucket truck. And Larry Luce from the school district contacted our Highway Deputy Superintendent Mark Brager to get permission for Dan to use the bucket truck. And he quickly said yes, and the baby osprey was placed back in the nest. And thank you to everyone involved for ensuring a very happy ending for our local osprey family.
Nice.
I mean, look how high up that bucket
Yeah.
truck is.
2 new babies to
Mom.
talk about in
Miss
one
the
meeting.
mom. What, Tom?
2 new babies to talk about in one meeting.
Oh,
Wow,
that's
that's
true,
true.
very true. Yeah, mom and baby safely back in the nest.
Very cool.
Very nice, thank you. Thank you to everybody that was involved. All right, that's what I got. Cindy, what do you have?
So there is an air quality alert. If anybody hasn't noticed, the sky looks a little funky out there and
like
has for the
Venus.
last couple of
It's
days.
so
There's
weird,
some
and the sun
Canadian,
is kind of
apparently
like
Canada
that.
now just burns in the summer. But, so everyone should take precautions, especially if you have breathing problems or respiratory problems. All of our Parks and Rec programs are continuing. They're just taking frequent breaks as needed and,
Are there
monitoring.
alerts going out for the air
The
quality?
county put out an alert,
Ryan just put one out?
yeah.
And we're keeping all our facilities open.
Everything's open, it's just
Transfer
people
station,
should be
parks,
alerted
but,
and
Yeah, just make sure that the.
if you don't feel
people
good,
take
sit
breaks.
down and take a break and,
Yeah.
And then, as Tom said, Tom, Bill, and I actually attended the Southampton College update yesterday for the master plan. Bill had a lot of questions. Since he's not here, I will reiterate some of them. He did ask about the windmill and what their plan for the windmill was, and they did say that the restoration of the windmill on the college campus is fully funded and should be completed within the next 2 years.
Really?
They have started, they did the outer, I think, structural stuff, but, so they said they do have a plan, they have it fully funded, and they will be, having it renovated on site. He also asked about traffic for the potential incoming hospital. I know, Tom, you had said that a traffic study had been done, when they were initially exploring moving the hospital there. But Bill made good points. It's traffic changes on an annual, sometimes monthly basis. And, I'm sure the data, just like the data that we're waiting for the study from the county is now 2 years old? That data gets stale and it becomes, okay, now you have a report based on data that's no longer valid. So he was asking them to please, before they pursue anything, to, take that into consideration. I mean, I myself question moving the hospital further west and putting it on 39 when we know what happens if, God forbid, there's an accident or a fatality and that road gets shut down. How do you get people to and from the hospital? I mean, it's a definite question that needs to be looked at. And
Cindy, I believe Bill also, he apprised me of that meeting. He mentioned something about the fact that there was a discussion of some of the paper roads and stuff and other types of.
he said that there is a paper the trustees own on that site, and he asked what the status of that was, what they were doing with that.
And some of that could be explored as potential options for traffic mitigation.
He wasn't really putting it in that aspect. He just more or less wanted to know if they were aware that there was a trustee
There was
road
one
and
there.
what were their plans with it.
Right,
Okay.
right. They did say, and again, I think Tommy John asked the question, they are in conversation with the Long Island Railroad. The railroad always took the position that they'd look at a new train station there once the college and the hospital or whatever.
I know the county
we're
executive
gonna
is
go.
also pushing big for that, but it's,
Right,
it just becomes a question, and they showed us 3 different scenarios for, I think it was 10 years out, right?
Right.
And, one of those was a seasonal use of the property, which I had questioned, bringing in more people seasonally for seasonal programming and events. They didn't say what the events were.
Right.
So, Ann Welker was there. She did ask them to please start engaging with the public and the press and making sure everyone's aware of these plans and what they're doing. It kind of was like our Jackson Avenue thing, right? It was kind of like 3 different scenarios for what the campus could be. But in none of those scenarios did I see anything about a hospital any sooner than 10 years out.
Oh, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Hospital was always mentioned 10 years or later.
They have to do a lot of fundraising.
A lot of
before they're gonna be able
fundraising,
to
the
move.
campus needs a lot of work, they're demoing buildings, but like it was said, you're demoing buildings and people wanna know what's going on, they're starting to see stuff happening, what are you doing, what's the plan? It was questioned about the workforce housing, how many units, what's the plan to get people in on that, and, traffic mitigation for that, so.
Well, I'm on that group, and we meet every other month, and it just, that's the same question that I always ask, when are we gonna get down to the specifics?
And
Where's
they
the
really-
wastewater treatment plant going? But they said they have something they're gonna show us at the next meeting, so, but they didn't show you anything like that.
No, well, they had, it was very generic and it was
Concept
very
plans,
broad.
I guess. Yeah.
It was like pie in the sky kind of stuff, as far as I'm concerned, like what they would like to do versus what they currently have the money to do. They're reworking some buildings, they're taking one out, they're building a SOMAS building closer to that side of campus where, SOMAS is across the street. Because that building, I guess, is unsalvageable, so they're replacing it instead of repairing it.
I think they're renovating one of the housing buildings and building the other building is gonna be new for housing, one
Yeah.
for undergraduate, one for graduate students. But yeah, there's obviously,
But it
Lots to
scared
be
me a
done.
little bit when they mentioned summer use and events. I was like, where are you going? Is that bringing, it didn't sound like, they didn't really get into it as to, are these events for the public? Are these events for the college? Like, we all know, I mean, if anybody's been to an All for the Sea concert at the LIU campus when it was there, I mean, those
Yeah.
were big events and they were challenging then. So I can't imagine what they would be like now.
right,
Especially without a railroad station there, at least then you could get off the train and go to the concert and then get back on the train.
right,
But
right.
they'll have to put the platform back there.
So it was interesting, but it was
Yeah.
a lot of broad discussion without any real teeth to anything. So I think they're hosting these sessions to say that we're all involved and we're all being kept in the loop, but we're not really getting any finite answers on anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's good that you're in that group too, because they said that the group that we had yesterday, as well as your group that you're in, they're trying to keep everybody apprised and kind of flesh things out in these groups before they go out to the press and the general public with stuff that is gonna get, like if they had gone to the public with what they presented us yesterday, the public would have had more questions than answers and we would have heard from it because it was like, it was scenarios, was what it was. But
Right.
in none of those scenarios did I say anything about a hospital any sooner than 10 years out.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
So.
But it was helpful, also from my perspective,
You
not
went
having,
yesterday too?
it was a Zoom call. So I think they're slowly
I don't know
branching
why I
out.
didn't know about it.
Kathy Burke Gonzalez was there.
Yeah, Kathy Burt, right.
Somehow Michael and I didn't
Yeah,
get the
Ann
message.
was in on it, and she did make the good point about, kind
Involving
of
the
the
press.
outreach and,
In
so,
the public.
which is, I don't know if you had planned to mention it, but that's when I said, okay, we'll mention it today to start that.
Yeah, it's, like I said, I have more questions than I did before I attended, so maybe it's good, because it starts you thinking about it.
Well,
But-
and I'm sure you all voiced some of these.
Oh, yeah,
opinions,
and I
so
would
they
say,
are aware.
I will say that Bill asked the most questions, and it was all about the local people, and it was about traffic, and it was about,
Yeah.
the windmill and things that our local constituents have come out to ask about, so, I want to thank him for raising those questions.
Good. Oh, and to follow up, one last thing, I just got a text from Nick Jimenez, separately, on the Noyak Road sidewalk project.
It's almost
He
done.
said, they're working on the corner of Bruggs Path today. The sidewalks will be substantially complete tomorrow, which is
Yay.
excellent news. And we just need some minor topsoil restoration and
Yeah,
cleanup.
so they will be there, there will be crews there, but they'll just be doing some of the minor cleanup work.
Yeah.
And so people should be very relieved to see that they won't have the delays like we've had for the last week or so. And
Yeah.
we appreciate everybody's patience through that process.
Absolutely, yeah, it's very difficult to sit in the
Real-time
traffic.
updates. This is good.
But yeah. Great. All right, does anybody else have anything else they want to mention? In that case, I move to go into executive session for some confidential legal advice and
Sec-
then close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.